Welcome to my channel. I am sharing my thoughts on the most recent update of the Momma Guthrie case. Okay. I understand that it may not be very easy to follow. I'm going to try to share this video in two formats within the same video, not two videos, but within the same video, share it in two formats. So a still of this board so that anyone who wants to can look and examine and perhaps add or take away from it, in your own time. You may even have some information or something, which is awesome that you want to give the FBI. And, just hopefully is helpful. But these are my thoughts on it. It's my understanding, unfortunately, that tragically they're having issues with breaking this case. At least that's my understanding from the most recent update. From what I heard, it is not unreasonable. The causes for them not breaking this case thus far are actually very understandable, unfortunately. So yeah, this is a very tragic situation that we find ourselves in because many of us want Momma Guthrie to be found unharmed. Okay, so let me go ahead and get started. Okay, and I'm going to try to make it as easy to understand as possible. So now this is not the exact, I wish I was able to be that thorough. Okay. But then probably would take hours or even days, right, with everything I have to do. But this is not, by the way, the layout, because I don't want you to be misinformed. This is not the layout necessarily, okay? If it was, that would be an extreme coincidence. But this is not necessarily the layout of Momma Guthrie's neighborhood. This is a hypothetical neighborhood to give you just a theory that I have in regards to vehicles and timing. So vehicles, cameras, and timing. That's the biggest thing that I have so far on my mind. So in this neighborhood, of course, I'm focusing on homes. Now, of course, the prevalent, most important place is the scene of the crime, Mama G's house. So Momma Guthrie's home. That's where the whole genesis was. In fact, Momma Guthrie's home is the home that I drew first. And around her home, you have, of course, other homes because she lived, from my understanding, in a normal neighborhood. Okay. And so there's going to be homes. I presume that there's going to be streets and roads. It's not like it's unfinished property. Like I had a family member that bought a house so new that the development was actually unfinished, but it is finished now. But when that person bought it, it was not finished. But it looks like this is an established neighborhood that she lives in. So there's no reason for us to presume that any of the roads, at least in that neighborhood, are unfinished. So I presume that those roads are finished and that we can, not assume that's a given. So there's a lot of land from my understanding. There's a lot of land, and I put around Mama G's house, there's going to be off-road land where it says, I put no road, land only. That's important. And I'll say why now. The reason why I put that is because it is within the realm of possibility. They have probably, and I think that's why they were also having the search parties, etc. It is a possibility that Momma Guthrie could be out in that land. But if she is in fact out in that land area, or and not necessarily in that land area, because she really literally could be anywhere. That's what makes it so frustrating, at least for me. But if she was in a land area, the question is, how are they contacting? How are these people, if the contact is authentic, how are they contacting TMZ and other news sources in order to talk about the money and finances? So that's I've also put it because that needs to be seriously considered. Now, I'm thrown for a loop, but I don't like to presume anything until I've proven it, beyond a shadow of a doubt. So I don't fully understand how they could communicate, at least not easily, in the wilderness, or whatever you call this land out there where she's living, because I hear there's even coyotes and stuff. So wherever the land or topography she's got going on in her neighborhood, can it be reasonable for someone to be in bushes in a cave? I doubt it, but I would not. I know it seems crazy, but due to the seriousness of the case, while I would not make that my top place that I look, because it seems like this guy, he didn't look really rough to me, like he could do that, but because it's serious, I would never not check it out. Okay, so my question would be, is it possible, is it at all possible for them to be in some bushes and some truck in some off obscure place where they're not terribly concerned about being found because they're out in the wilderness or something like that? But then that is the question. If that's the case, how are they making these communications? That's why I said it's maybe not likely. First of all, how are they going to take care of an old woman in such a situation? But then how are they? That's the first question, 'cause she's also absolutely not in physical condition to be, traversing through cacti, evading predators, and being out in the elements. So it's not likely, but you still want to, at least, entertain that thought, because it's not entirely impossible unless the FBI can rule out that there is zero ability out there in that wilderness, in that land, in that off-road land. There's zero ability to get any Wi-Fi and make this many communications with TMZ and other news sources. Then it's understandable if they rule that out. So getting to the houses. So you're going to have, so I put different streets. Okay? And I didn't give the streets a name or anything. But I put 1, 2, and 3 streets on here. Now, of course, I realized that there could be more streets, but in a typical neighborhood, there's approximately like 3 main streets around, or even fewer, right? 2. It could be as much as 2 around, some neighborhoods. It depends, at least nice neighborhoods, I think they try to keep the streets, actually down, for aesthetic. So typically in a nice neighborhood, you're going to have like 1, 2, maybe 3 streets. Now, of course, I'm not talking about the side streets and stuff, but I'm talking about for example, if you have a nice house like this, typically you're gonna see like maybe 1 street in front of you and maybe 1 street behind you, maybe. That's a characteristic I think you have with nice neighborhoods. Not to dig at anybody that lives, in a neighborhood like mine, for example. That's not a nice neighborhood, okay, where there's streets all over the place. Not necessarily in nice neighborhoods. So she mostly has like land and maybe even other houses. I forget what the topography looks like from the visuals from the news, but I'm certain that in a nice neighborhood like hers, she doesn't see streets all over the place. What she sees is maybe a street in front of her home, maybe a street, but that's stretching it because it's a nice area behind her home. But then once you are kind of leaving the neighborhood, that's when you see more streets and stuff like that, because typically fewer streets in nice neighborhoods. Okay, so I don't want to, be weird and harp on that. So let me move on. So, but there's a reason why I'm mentioning the streets, and that's because the streets are on my mind in regards to, what could possibly be helpful in cracking this case. Now, the unfortunate part is that it would involve some mathematics. It would involve some mathematics, unfortunately, and a little bit of awareness. A little bit. I think they have that, but then, of course, we don't know perfectly what they have or what they don't have, and I'm fine with that, because this is her life on the line, so it's okay as long as they're doing what they need to be doing. I'm fine with not knowing everything, but nonetheless, they do need a kind of an idea of when this took place, and then I think that my theory could possibly work out for them. Okay. But it would require them knowing kind of a ballpark of when this crime took place and some really good mathematics. Okay, so here's why I'm saying this. So in regards to these streets, right, because it's my understanding that the terrible thing is they seem to not have very good footage at all because of the type of housing, the type of neighborhood this is, and the probably even the politics and stuff like that. It's big on privacy, low on necessarily security. So it seems like they don't have vital footage that could be so useful and so helpful to cracking this case much, much sooner. So we're already at that detriment. So what are we going to? We're going to math, and we're going to the ballpark of when this happened, and we're utilizing the streets. So at some point there's going to be a camera, and my theory takes into account that we don't necessarily know when that point is, but we know that math exists, we know a ballpark of when the crime took place, and we know that eventually there is a camera and there are streets, provided that they are not off road. And if they are off-road, you still have the question of how on earth are they making these contacts to news sources if they are in the wilderness? So let me go further into this theory. So this is like the streets visual camera theory, okay? So I too kind of gave up on that when I heard also, like many of you did, that there's not really much footage, okay, due to the politics, due to the age, due to the level of independence, just a lot of economical and cultural factors, microcultural factors with this neighborhood, why there's not much footage. Okay. All right. So that's a detriment. However, there is a workaround, possibly workaround. Well, there's not a camera directly in this neighborhood, which is not helpful. There are cameras around, presumably. So the question is, where are those cameras? And are you ready to do some math? Okay. So that's the question. So I put that the crime, now please pardon me because I did not confirm that this is the actual time of the crime. From my memory, which could be faulty, usually I have excellent sharp memory, but it could be faulty. I did not check. So please, if you remember something different, you're probably right, and my apologies, okay? But I remember them saying, I think a while back, about a week ago, that the crime may have happened between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. in the morning. If that is the case, that is actually very good for them. I'll tell you why. Down here, I wrote, because typically in any neighborhood, unless you live in the crazy city like me, but even then, typically that's unless it's like a weekend, where weekends are kind of weird because people go out on weekends. So I forget whether this would happen on a weekday or not, unfortunately. But let's say it was a weekday. Well, there's typically less cars. Even in the ghetto, which is where I live, unfortunately. I'm trying to come up. I might come up in Jesus' name, okay? But even here in the hood, right? There are less cars typically on the road between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning. Okay? So when you take that into account, that the crime may have happened between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., that means that would put whoever this person is, if they didn't go off road, which would make sense why there's more camera visuals, which would make sense why the case hasn't been cracked yet, okay? Unless they went off-road into that wilderness or whatever, then they have utilized one or more of these streets. So provided that actually is the time frame of the crime, there's not that many vehicles, and that can work to the FBI's advantage because of the math that they're going to have to do if they utilize this theory. So, the situation is this. So now of course you could go that direction, but my board is only but so big. So please don't think that they couldn't have gone in this direction. It's just that my board is only but so big and I'm not God. I suppose I might have been able to do that with AI, but I honestly wouldn't even know how to, convey that to AI. It would have taken me long. I couldn't have did the video this early, posted so soon. So maybe this is the best way, but definitely I could have went that way too. So please don't think that it couldn't have been that way or even this way. Remember, this is not an accurate layout of her neighborhood. And if you actually have an accurate layout of her neighborhood, that's awesome. Okay. So, let's say, the only two ways in this, because that is one of the first things I suppose they may have did. And if they didn't, they definitely need it. They need a layout of her neighborhood. So the only way on this board for them to take Mama Guthrie out anywhere and take her to another destination, they would either have to go off-road. Okay. And then, but you have to answer the question of where is the Wi-Fi coming from that they're communicating with? Or are they using someone that is also in on the crime that is not necessarily at the same place? So it could be, oh my goodness, it could be a complex type of crime, which is unfortunate, which means that it's definitely more than one person, because one person is on site. Perhaps one person is with Mama Guthrie and another person is doing the communications, which is wild, but possible. So once they leave with Mama Guthrie, they have only two choices. They have to go off-road, either this way or they have to go off-road that way towards a neighbor's house. Or they have to go this way on the street. As they're going to the street, I think I put 1, 2, 3 cameras, okay? So let's say that they go this way, okay? What's that? Oh my goodness. Let's say they go, hold on.